Welcome guys and gals, this is Griever back here, bringing you guys more 7 Deadly Sins content. I promised you guys that it would not be the end when the manga was over, it would not be the end of the Taizai content, and it is not. It just takes a while to structure these videos, because these videos take some polishing and re-recording a few things because I keep going off on tangents. This is already my 3rd attempt at recording this video. So with that being said, right away, what makes a best moment for you? That's the honest question, because this is going to be my top 7 moments in descending order from 7 to 1, and if you guys want to know why it's 7 moments, I mean, the joke is just right there, right? So the reason is I ask this question is because some of these moments you guys might disagree with. Some of them you might be wondering, okay, well, what about the Zeldris moments with Ominous Nebula? What about Bon and Zhivago's backstory? What about this? What about that? What about the revenge counter in the Hendrickson fight? All epic moments. But I'm going to spoil it for you right now. Those did not make the top 7. Not for me personally. And some moments are handled better in the anime, and there will be an anime version of this video coming out at some point as well, because I find that soundtrack, animation, voice acting, that can change certain moments into being from just a good moment in a manga to a great moment in an anime, or vice versa. So, that being said, why don't we just jump right in? And no, spoiler alert, this will not be 7 Escanor moments. I thought about it, I thought about trolling, because I could easily fill this with 7 great Escanor moments, but I managed to limit myself to only a couple. So, that being said, before we get underway, this does not necessarily mean that moment number 5 is undisputably better than moment number 6. Some of the order can be changed around. I just needed to make an order for the video. So, enough of me just prattling on. Let's get to 7 Deadly Sins, top 7 moments.
Number 7.
Never Again from chapter 131. This moment was amazing, regardless of what we know later on in the series. We find out about the curse and everything, and this I don't want to say it loses meaning necessarily, because the curse reveal is a huge emotional moment on Meliodas and Elizabeth's story in Taizai. But before we got any of that, we had chapter 131 with Meliodas trying to regain his lost demonic power, stolen from him by Merlin and put into a goddess amber for safekeeping by the Druids. This is where he is subjected to going through this never-ending nightmare of repeating glorious, beautiful, wonderful days with his previous love, Liz, and then watching her die, and having to go through the anger and sadness and wrath and destroying Danafor after Liz was murdered by Fraudrin. This was an amazingly emotional chapter, and it had an amazingly emotional moment in the fact that Meliodas attempts, after going through this constantly and agonizing over it, and Zanari and Elizabeth are speaking about this as they watch him struggle and sweat, that his spirit is slowly being deterred, and that was leading up in chapter 130. By chapter 131, he says, "Send me back again." And he is actually sacrificing, it's implied that the mental strain of this and the spirit on his soul will not be able to take it forever. It's not like he can keep doing this forever. He will either deteriorate and potentially lose his life, or he will just keep failing and he'll never get any better. So it's just torture at this point. It's just mindless torture. He decides in chapter 131 alright, I'm just going to have to let go. I know what I have to do. I have to forget everything about Liz. I need to just get control over my emotion. That should be easy. And he keeps talking to himself in the 3rd person, saying, right, Meliodas? Right, Meliodas? I just need to get used to her dying. It's easy, right? And we see him. It's no big deal. And he stands in the rain, and he looks up smiling, and we think he's finally going to deal with it and accept her death. And then, in a great characterization moment, Meliodas loses his shit again. It's an epic moment where he just says he can't do that. He can never forget Liz. He can't let go of his emotions and his wrath because he can never get over her dying. Every single time he sees her again, he just falls in love all over again, and it's impossible for him to not do that. But he can't get used to losing her. However, the love grows stronger, and so does his anger. He can't do it. But then at the very end of the chapter, we have the never again moment, where he feels so strongly that he realizes he doesn't want to repeat this mistake. And that's when the rain hits him. We think he's going to lose all control again and destroy Danafor again, no matter how many countless times he's gone through this. And at the end, he's tearfully crying in the rain as he stands over Liz's dead body, crying, "Never again." And it was such an emotionally powerful moment. He wakes up, tears in his eyes as he stares into the face of Elizabeth. And regardless what we know later on about the curses and the reincarnation and all that such, this moment, standalone in 131, was extremely powerful, seeing Meliodas go through this turmoil and this level of acceptance. It was an amazing moment, and that's my number 7.
Number 6.
Please Don't Leave Me Behind. This is from chapter 211.5, or the side story, A Doll That Asks for Love. It's the side story about Gother. We all know exactly the tragedy that is Gother's backstory. In fact, if any of you recall from my earlier videos and my old channel even, when I was reviewing Taizai before this chapter, I would have listed Gother right down at the bottom as one of my least favorite characters in the series, making Deanne into the memory amnesia girl all the time and all this such. Like, Gother's character and the problems that Gother caused up until this chapter was just too numerous to count. He very rarely contributed anything and only served there to sow turmoil within the group of the 7 deadly sins. And I did not like Gother as a character. I found him, he just wasn't likable to me. Even as an antagonist, even as that thorn in their side, it didn't make sense to me. And then we got this side story. Then we got this chapter, Please Don't Leave Me Behind, The Doll That Asks for Love. The moment is, of course, at the end. It's a 40-odd page side story telling us all about Gother, the doll's side story after the end of the Holy War happened and everything. And of course, he's a doll and all that such. Suffice it to say, he meets Bartra's sister back 50-odd years ago, 60-odd years ago, before Bartra and Denzel were young. They were only boys, maybe teenagers at best. Nadja, being the eldest sister, was a teenager around 16, 17, 18 herself, and she finds Gother under Leona's castle. There's a lot of questions, but suffice to say, they go on, and she's the one who basically reteaches Gother everything. We find out that he has a heart container filled with heart magic inside of his chest, and he believes this is his heart. Of course, Nadja the princess, is very sick, and even though they spend numerous days together, her time is coming. It's left ambiguous what her illness is, but she is going to die, and Gother cannot take that. They end up having sex the night that she dies, and he attempts to rip his own heart out and opens up her chest. It's a very gruesome scene, but it's so emotionally impactful. I'd almost like to say that this moment is this entire side story, but of course the key moment is when Gother is standing there, naked and with his chest ripped open, covered in blood, crying, realizing that his one friend has gone away. His one friend is dead, and the one he loves is gone, and he can't bring her back. He tries replacing her dead heart with his heart container with heart magic, which we find all about that later. It's such an emotionally impactful, it is probably the most emotional backstory in all of Seven Deadly Sins and all of Taizai. Like, don't get me wrong, there are some gruesome ones. We have the Hellbroom thing with the fairy wings. We have, of course, Bond and Zhivago and then after that the Elaine thing. Of course, Meliodas and Elizabeth. But Gother's is the one that impacted me the most, so that's why it's here at number 6. It was such a moment, and it was a key turning point for me, as this is my list, where I really hated Gother as a character, and this chapter completely 180'd my opinion on him 100%. So it was really impactful for me personally, and that's why it's here.
Number 5.
The Curse from chapter 224. Now, this one is honestly a bit of a split moment. The big thing here is that we had the reveal of the Demon King and Supreme Deity in full form in a double-page spread. That was a really intense moment and such. But I would argue that in 224 we have a bigger moment, and it's a long-lasting moment. If you wanted to count a moment as a single panel or page, then the Demon King Supreme Deity of 224 take the cake. They take it away. We get them in full glorious view, and they look like avenging gods. They look massive and important, and exactly what we expected leading up to this chapter. But I would argue that the moment is the curse, and it's the entirety of the actual chapter, leading up to the fact that Meliodas and Elizabeth have been cursed with these very torturous curses, and it's absolutely terrible. Like the impact, the emotion as we go through and find out that Elizabeth is going to be reborn, and Meliodas figuring it all out. Meliodas, having to suffer, waking up and realizing that he and Elizabeth failed in their attempts to defeat the Supreme Goddess and the Demon King, and now Elizabeth is lying dead next to him, and he wallows in self-pity until he runs across another Elizabeth, who doesn't know who he is and all this such, but eventually gains her memories back. And we've been cursed. Elizabeth then explains the curses and asks him to keep a promise that no matter what, you'll keep on living and all this such. And after all this, 3 days later, she dies. And no matter what he does, it's the eternal life and the reincarnation curses are just absolutely, they're devastating for these star-crossed lovers. See, the idea was killing them would be too easy because they defied their gods, their creators, their mother and father. They have done something absolutely terrible. They allow Meliodas immortality. No matter what happens, he will live because he has to live with the hate, the guilt, and the sadness and the sorrow that no matter what happens, Elizabeth will be born. And then she will, no matter what, no matter where she is or who she is, she will find him and fall in love with him. They actually weaved fate to the point that no matter what happens, Elizabeth will find Meliodas and fall in love with him again. So even if Meliodas tried to avoid the next reincarnation after 5, 6, 7, 20 reincarnations of Elizabeth, he said, enough is enough, I can't do this anymore, and he tries to leave, it doesn't matter where he goes. She will always be reborn near him and find him and fall in love with him. And Meliodas can't help, of course, but feel the same. And after 3 days, she gains her memories back over the course of time, and once she fully unlocks all her memories and has the memories of all her past selves once again, 3 days later, she is destined to die, and there's nothing he can do about it. Regardless of the issues with this later on in the series, at the time of 224, this was so emotionally impactful. We now have all the reasoning. We have the explanation as to why he reverted back into his emotionless state. Why, when he came back to fight against Fraudrin. Why Elizabeth looks like Liz. Why Zeldris banished her and said, remember the depths of your sin, and all these things, and all about all the multiple Elizabeths. We finally have all the information, and it is heart-wrenching, and we see it every single time on the faces of all the sins. It is just absolutely terrible, and Deanne must feel incredibly terrible about this because she's the one who pushed, and now the clock has started, and it's such an emotionally impactful chapter. 224, it brings the two main characters' backstories into play, and this is why it's at number 5, honestly. If you want to take away kind of the half reason is we get the full shot of the Supreme Goddess and Demon King, you can do that as well, but I think that the full backstory of the curses and the history of Meliodas and Elizabeth is at number 5.
Number 4.
I Love All of You. Chapter 248. This might be my most controversial one on the list, especially since it's so high up on the list. But I was actually taking my time and beginning to reread when I was going alongside of the latest season of the anime. And I was recently just reread this part of the arc of the story. And chapter 248, after Meliodas has declared himself, after they have lost their fight against Chandler, and the death of Gloxinia and Dolar, who actually their death scene was close to being on this list, because I found that very impactful as well. But this scene is probably the one that people are going to be surprised at the most, and being so high up, is the conversation in chapter 248 with Elizabeth and Meliodas as she continues to yell at him that he will not, becoming the Demon King will not solve anything. Why didn't you just ignore me? Why, when I asked for your help, if you truly believe that fate, because this is after we learned all about the curses, and she is destined, they have changed fate, that every reincarnation of Elizabeth, the Supreme Goddess and Demon King, have preordained it, that every single time she is reincarnated, she is destined to find and fall in love with him. Meliodas is being cynical about this, stating that once I become Demon King, those feelings of yours will disappear, because it doesn't make sense that over 100 Elizabeths, 107 Elizabeths up to this point, could fall in love with me. That every single one of you would just miraculously fall in love with me and not anyone else. That's the only explanation I can have. He's being this way, and he has nothing left in his soul. He's gone full demon mode. And this is where Elizabeth just is going to break down, but she cries and screams at him and says, why didn't you just ignore me when this happened? You had options. If you truly believe that I am destined to fall in love with you and that I can't help that, then why didn't you move on? Why didn't you just ignore me? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And then this is where Meliodas, who has been in his demon cloak form ever since the fight against Escanor, he's been in that same form. And he has the cholera, and his demon mark is all activated, and his eyes are black as coal. He looks down, and this form fades away for the first and only time. And he says, I can't help it. And he's back in his original form in one of the panels, where he's just himself, Meliodas, and says, every version of you, as a goddess or as a princess of Leonis, I love them all. And this was so emotionally, it was romantic, it was passionate for me, and especially what happens next. But that moment right there, that was key, is that he can't help himself. Even though he's being a hypocrite here, saying there's no way that 108 of you or 170 of you could have fallen in love with me. That just, the odds are so astronomical. These feelings of yours are fake. But he's being a hypocrite because he says, after Elizabeth throws it back in his face, he says, I can't help it. Every single one of you with different personality, different attitude, you're all Elizabeth to me, and I love every single one of you. And that is just, it was, especially where the arc had gotten so dark, Seven Deadly Sins had been disbanded, Elizabeth is captured, they can't do anything against Chandler and Cusack. This is just such a great romantic moment, and it really speaks to their characters. I just absolutely, I thought it was an incredible, incredible moment. That's why it's here so high up on the list. And some of you might be thinking, well, especially with what happens next, she hugs him and cries and says, Elizabeth, Meliodas, let me help you. You're right, I'm sure my feelings aren't fake. Meliodas talks about how much he loves being around her, and he loves her so much he can barely stand it. It's incredible. And every time he would hold her, his heart would just flutter in bliss. And then he turns his demon mode back on in this chapter and says, but now I feel nothing. And he simply states that the only reason he's doing this is because all he has left in his being. He has no emotions. He's finally lost them all, and the last vestige of it is just keeping his promise, becoming the Demon King and breaking the curses. That's all he has left. And Elizabeth arc bitch slaps him across the face. So pick your moment. Pick either the moment. For me, it's the emotional first one I mentioned. So I'm kind of cheating here, but this whole chapter, once again, similar to the last couple of moments here, it's almost the entirety of the chapter. For me, 248, it's when he goes back to his original form and tells her how much he has fallen in love with every single one of her. That to me was the moment. It really made me feel. But of course, when he goes back to demon mode, saying I feel nothing, and then after that, when he challenges Elizabeth to, if hitting me will make you feel better, then go ahead, and she launches a giant arc and just slaps him across the tower, just slaps him across the room. That was also an extremely epic moment, because this is the same demon Meliodas that wouldn't take crap from Zeldris and Estarossa working together. And then, so pick your moment, as I already said mine, but chapter 248 is loaded with great moments.
Number 3.
The One. From chapter 232, the first appearance of the One. Okay, so we finally got an Escanor moment in here. You guys were waiting for it. You knew it would be on the list, but which ones would be on the list? And honestly, this one, the One, when he first goes into the One form, he only did it 3 times in the entirety of the series. I mean, you can count 4 if you want to count his abysmal side story. Nakaba really screwed that up. But really, he only went it 3 times that we truly saw in an actual fight. So, and the first appearance of it is the greatest, because we had theorized, we had wondered what would happen when he finally, when it was perfect noontime, when he ran away in that fight against Galen and such, and when he was close to the time limit but not quite there and all that stuff against Estarossa. Now we see it. In chapter 232, we not only get the amazing fight, butchered by the anime, but the amazing fight between Escanor and Demon Meliodas. Perfect cube, pushed to their limit. Escanor is actually being bloody and beaten. He's being beaten down. He's strong, he's powerful, but Demon Meliodas, leader of the 10 Commandments Meliodas, assault mode, because he's a Gundam now, he just can't be beat. And then it hits noontime and he becomes the One. 1,000 divine cuts by Demon Meliodas does nothing. Not but an itch, says Escanor. And when he goes into the invincible incarnation of power, the One, and he just lowers his hand with one swipe, Divine Sword Escanor, and ends the battle with one blow, the One. It was the best, it was the hype, it's why a lot of people love Escanor. The One mode from then on was still incredible. And Nakaba basically had to nerf it so that he didn't literally kill every character he went up against, just for the simple sake of the fact that if he had, this moment was absolutely amazing. It's one of the best chapters and one of the best fights in all of Seven Deadly Sins, so that's why it takes the number 3 spot, Escanor in the One.
Number 2.
Sit Down, as I like to call it, from chapter 246. It was hard not to have this moment at number 1. It was actually difficult, because and to put this over the appearance of the One was also kind of difficult. But do you guys remember chapter 246? Demon Meliodas has just fought against Escanor in the One, and they have fought toe to toe. Though he lost, he's not down and out. And when Chandler shows up and all that such, he declares the disbandment of the 7 Deadly Sins. He will become the Demon Lord, and he takes off for the capital of Camelot. He shows up in this chapter, Elizabeth at his side, and tells Zeldris and Estarossa, I'm going to become the Demon Lord, and I'm not handing Elizabeth over to anyone. Anybody got a problem with that? And they both go to strike him. Remember, Estarossa, bing, stopped him, no problem. Don't really understand that part anymore, actually. I guess Revenge Counter uses Wrath, so, what have you. So the Commandment of Love stopped it before, and none of this matters. The Demon King's ability, the magical ability of the ruler, the 10% or what have you, the portion of it that Zeldris has right here, none of that matters, and they are shocked. Meliodas they both go to attack him, and he just drops Hellblaze right down on top of both of them, and I call it the moment, sit down. And he stops Cusack, who tries to interfere. Zeldris is on the ground. They are being crushed under the gravity, the weight of Meliodas' Hellblaze. It can't be. I possess the power of the Demon Lord right now, and yet I can't move an inch. Estarossa attempts to get up. He tries, and he starts to, just to be forced down even further into the ground. And that's when both of them are on the ground, laying down prostrate before Meliodas as he leans forward and says, we're going to have a little talk right now, so settle down. And it's one of the best moments in all of Taizai when Meliodas finally, full power, wasn't gonna take any shit from anyone. It was an amazing moment where he just took the three brothers, were all finally together again, and Meliodas was like, I'm the older brother. I will become the Demon Lord. And they try to take Elizabeth, and he just, boom, lays down the law. And that's why it's at the number 2 spot. This moment was just, I remember when I did the review for it, I remember when I first read it. This moment sticks out in almost everybody's mind as one of the best moments in all of Seven Deadly Sins. And that's why it's there at the number 2 spot. But there's still one more. There's one more moment that stands above all.
Number 1.
Who decided that? Chapter 185. Need I really say more, ladies and gentlemen? I don't even need to say anything else. You guys all know the chapter. You all know the moment. You all know the memes. And there's a reason it's the meme. It's the reason that, and it was difficult to decide on the true Escanor moment to put it number 1. You all knew it would be an Escanor moment, though I do admit the number 2 spot was close. Something about that moment just shook me. But this moment is what everyone talks about. The biggest flex, as Nux Taku would say, in all of Seven Deadly Sins. This is before we saw the one, when there was the moment with Galland, and yes, that was impressive, but here, this is the guy that stopped Meliodas. Revenge counter. The entire fight is one big flex between the you have no effect on me portion and the, oh, that's why I felt pain. I pack quite a punch, don't I? Just the arrogance and the prideful attitude. Escanor boasts, and he never gives up. He cruel suns and pride flares him into the lake. He walks forward. Estarossa attempts to talk like he's still winning. My darkness is stronger, and I can full counter any physical blow. It was fun while it lasted, but then Escanor swipes and slashes him anyway, and he was too fast for Estarossa. And that's when he says, your darkness swallowed up my sun? Who decided that? My attacks cannot reach thee? Who decided that? The only one who gets to decide such things is me. And that's when he grows. The cruel sun is massive, and he just looks down on him and die. Boom! Completely eradicates and takes out Estarossa, winning it without actually going the one. We didn't know what the one was at this point. All we knew is Escanor still has power in reserve. And he just took out, he's already shown, he defeated one commandment, he bested another commandment, and now he's taken out 2 birds with 1 stone because Zeldris flies into the sun. So from what we can understand, he has taken out 4 out of the 10 commandments by himself. This is, of course, also going along the fact of at nighttime, in a weakened state, he managed to deal a serious blow to 2 other commandments. So he's 6 out of 10 by this point in the story. And just the who decided that, the memes, just the, like, as I said, I'm talking about it, but do I really need to? It's, of course, the best moment in all of Taizai. Who decided that is clearly the number 1 moment in all of Seven Deadly Sins. All 300 plus chapters of it. I wish there wasn't more than 300 chapters, but that's beside the point. That's my top 7 list, guys. What did you guys all think of it? Do you agree with some of my moments? Do you disagree with the moments? Are there moments missing that you would have put there? Do you disagree with the order of the moments? Let me know down in the comment section down below which are your top 7 favorite moments. I might end up doing a sequel video to it discussing what the fan base believes, what my subscriber base believes should replace certain moments. Maybe do sort of a subscribers top 7 moments or a poll or something like that. But either way, I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Tell me why my moments, I picked a good one, or why you disagree with it, and tell me your top 7 as well. This has been Griever with your top 7 moments. There'll be more Taizai content as always on this channel. Like, comment, and subscribe, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you back here next time. This has been Griever, signing out.